From the studio that has won no awards whatsoever comes the podcast that should have already been canceled. Welcome to another episode of Have You Read This? A podcast for bookworms, lovers of sarcasm, and those dangerously close to overdosing on caffeine. Load up on ibuprofen, because here comes 15 minutes of your life you'll never be able to get back.
Episode 46. Hey, this is also the first episode of 2026, and I know that absolutely none of you could really give a crap. Anyway, there's probably 4 of you that saw this TikTok video that I made. I asked a question about what long book I should start the year off with. I've talked about this too many times, but at the beginning of every year, I've kind of made it a ritual, if you will, of picking out a really long book. So I shared some of the ones that I had here. Got some really good comments on that video, by the way. In all seriousness, it was good stuff. But I did end up starting the year with Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And I think right now I'm about 100 pages in. I can easily see why some people would have a tough time with this book. And I could also understand why people would ultimately DNF it. I think so far, this book makes me feel like one of the dumbest humans on earth just trying to read this thing. And if you looked at my search history and what I've entered into ChatGPT, you'd probably agree with that statement. I think the last time that I felt this stupid reading was when I had Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. Both of these books were written by individuals who possess an intelligence that is so far beyond me that I will never attempt to even comprehend it. That's not to say Infinite Jest is bad. I'm just saying it will take my smooth brain longer to get through this one than I initially expected. But none of this should come as a surprise to you. When I got started podcasting, I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to trash talk a book. So you might be wondering, what's going on with this episode? Like, why am I focusing on trends that need to die? Things that I consider negative or bad? The answer is, I'm not talking bad about a specific book. Instead, I'm talking bad about people. And if you've been alive more than 10 minutes, you're already aware that the number of stupid people out there is far greater than it should be. Maybe we should have listened to Ligotti after all and just stopped reading years ago. So I've got a couple of these things just kind of been grinding on me. They're in no particular order. I mean, because why would I do that? That's like too much effort. I'm going to kind of go through these. These are just trends that I've seen, I think probably primarily on TikTok. It's kind of spilled over to like Facebook and Instagram a little bit, but there's just some things that as a grumpy middle-aged old fart, I just wish would die in 2025. The first one is claiming that reading certain kind of books are performative. I'm not sure if this is the TikTok algorithm seeing that I posted about Infinite Jest and then it starts feeding me content that it thinks is related to that. But the other day I saw this post, somebody tossing Infinite Jest on their bed or their desk, whatever. And the caption was something along the lines of this person was about to be a performative reader. Maybe there's people out there who select a book and read it in public because they want others to see what they're reading. However, I would like to offer an alternative theory. So hang in there. This is really, really complex. I want you to imagine with me a situation where someone saw a book review online and they became curious about that book. So what they did was they sought out that book and began to read that book. And yet they were so excited about reading it, they made a post about it. I know that comes as a shock. Finding a new read and sharing that online is not always performative. Taking a book with you to read in a lobby is not performative. We have all this stuff going on, like we got to get off of our devices. But yet when somebody does get off their device and they're reading a book, sometimes that becomes performative. And you know what? That's garbage. Just last night I saw a video of someone and they were out to eat and they were holding some kind of a classic book. I can't even remember what it was. And the caption was something along the lines of, I am out to eat and performative reading. Of course, all their emotions were exaggerated, and I know that I'm butchering the caption somewhat, but look, you get the idea. If you're outside of your home reading, just know that some influencer somewhere will be triggered by your performative actions. It does make me wonder though, wouldn't it be more performative to set up your phone in a restaurant and record yourself reading and eating for the sole purpose of posting it online to make fun of somebody who just enjoys books? I mean, can you imagine this dude's friend circle? Like he shares this thing and hell yeah, bro. That was an awesome job recording yourself eating and reading. Man, I bet the earth will change its rotational axis because of this. And if you're in a friend circle with someone who makes videos like that, pull them to the side and please tell them to stop. The next one I talked about in the previous episode, and that's arguing about audiobooks. Specifically, do they count towards reading goals? And before I share my thoughts, I would actually love to know why anyone cares about this. Seriously. I saw a post on Facebook the other day, which was a person celebrating their reading for the year, and they had a screenshot of Goodreads, and it said that they had finished 366 books, which is insane. I mean, really. But second, and I think this is probably more important, does this person listening to 366 audiobooks and hitting some kind of crazy goal have any influence on my happiness or daily life? Absolutely not. And if you give that post more than 3 seconds of thought, then I think you might have an issue. On the post, you can imagine some of the comments, and a lot of the ones that I saw before the brain rot kicked in, it was just degrading them. They were, all you do is listen to books. That doesn't count. And how does anybody do this many books? And you don't have, it was just negative. All of this helped me realize that only mere peasants engage in such trifling activities, and thus must be hanged, drawn, and quartered, as ordered by the king of Goodreads reading goals, their lifeless head stuck on a light post outside of the nearest Barnes & Noble, as a warning to all others that the only way to engage in literature is to hold it in your hand and read it. Ugh. Look, I work with a lot of people affected by disability, many of whom will never read a book. There's a lot of folks that I know that have profound vision loss, or maybe they're blind. So audiobooks are their only option for taking in really any kind of literature at all. So am I supposed to tell them that listening to the book doesn't count and they need to discover a way for a blind person to go read a hardback? Or maybe you could just not care about audiobooks counting and focus on something more worthwhile. The next one, talking about your least favorite books of the year. And I know I'm probably going to offend a couple of you out there, and I am absolutely okay with that. This comes up several times. You know, we're at the end of the year rolled around, and I can almost imagine creators hating a book so bad earlier in the year that they kept a list written on the wall in blood. And these were the books that they could not wait to trash in a recap rant of the year. I've had plenty of books that I didn't like, plenty of books that I didn't really enjoy. There was some that I just thought, just kind of average. None of those books will be discussed here on the podcast or any of my social channels, and for two reasons. Number one, I don't want to trash an author like that. Writing a book is not easy, and I would imagine it's even more difficult to throw your work out into the world only for someone to list it in a podcast or a video claiming it was one of the worst books of 2025. I mean, how terrible is that? So what makes my opinion the only valid one? Well, except that my opinion is actually the only valid one. However, I have books that I've loved, which others read and they didn't care for. So which one of us is right? I would much rather hear more about why you love the books you love than why you hate the books you hate. This one I see on Facebook, and this is kind of how the post will go down. I am only 8 pages into this 500-page book, and I'm just having a really hard time. Should I DNF this, or does it get better? Well, Brenda, You are an adult enough to select the book, so I'm fairly certain you don't need random strangers on the internet to tell you whether or not to keep reading it. You had your big girl pants on when you bought the thing, so you should be able to decide on your own whether or not you want to keep reading or not. I think what bothers me the most about this kind of post or trend or whatever, I think what bothers me the most about this one is it's not like we all have instant and immediate access to anything and everything through the internet. A quick search revealed that I could, right now, buy a life-size animatronic shark, coyote urine, 1,500 live ladybugs, frozen smoke, and even uranium ore from Amazon. And if I can find all of that, don't you think it would be volumes easier to find a few reviews about the book I'm currently reading so that strangers online don't have to make up my mind for me? Next, making videos about books you want to read but are afraid of. I'm guessing that the people that do this, I think what happens, they find some of the most talked about books on TikTok and they toss them all in a video. And so you end up scrolling, assuming you stop to read this crap, through photos with captions about why these books intimidate them. Aside from the book containing content that you would find extremely disturbing, an issue that could easily be sidestepped by reading trigger warnings and reviews, I cannot think of a scenario where I was sitting, minding my own business, perhaps enjoying an afternoon energy drink, when around the corner lurked a copy of East of Eden. Or worse, A Little Life. And it was there waiting to pounce and attack me. And I live every minute of every day in fear that I will never overcome these books. If the thought of reading a specific book scares you, I would suggest heading over to Amazon, where they sell full-body protective suits that you'll most likely want to wear in and out of the house to shield you from the horrible dangers, like books, that await around every corner. You should not be scared of reading the book. Either you want to read it or you don't. Don't make a video about crap that scares you like that. And finally, I know you're like, thank God, making fun of people for just now discovering a classic. A few years ago, I made a connection with someone who I would say is more of a reader than I have ever been. And he'd been reading for a much longer time. And his memory recall for the books that he's read and quotes from these authors was mind-blowing to me. I was always so impressed, and I loved talking to him for this reason. And he was also one of the very few people that had read nearly everything that I had. It just made conversations with him about books like this great experience. But at no point did he ever taunt or tease me about a book that I had not heard of. I mentioned sometimes I would come across a book that was considered by a lot of people as a classic, and he never said anything like, oh, you're just now, I read that in 1939. No words like that ever came out of his mouth. I wish I knew when and where this type of video first got started, but it is truly hot garbage, even more so than Jake Paul's boxing career. I'm always excited to learn when anyone picks up a book that I've read, regardless of notoriety or publication date. And I'm not going to make like, oh, you just now found out I've read that many, many years ago. You're an absolute idiot because you didn't know about it before me. We get it. You're so well read that Goodreads has given you the top reader prize, and you have a special little gold star on your refrigerator to prove it. Congratulations. I would say that I found reading late in this game. Since I started using Goodreads, I've only logged 573 books. That means there are millions more that I've yet to discover. So my apologies if I'm just now getting around to read something you picked up 15 years ago. This was a bonus one. Thought I was going to toss this in. Seems to tick a lot of people off. I considered mentioning videos where creators will hold the book up and it's held in such a way that you can't see the cover and they just keep talking and the cover is revealed later in the video. I know these annoy a lot of people. However, I do also understand why a creator would choose to do this. If you pay attention to analytics at all, usually the watch time on a lot of videos is half of what the video is. Many wait to see the book cover and then just keep scrolling. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't see the cover and they're like, I hate these, I'm scrolling. Creators want to keep viewers engaged to increase watch time, and not sharing that cover until a little bit later in the video is a way to accomplish that. Since I can't state with 100% certainty that I will never use this tactic again, I obviously can't include that in my list. Rules for thee, but not for me type of thing. Okay, enough grumpiness. I've said my piece, and since I still have 5,789 more pages of Infinite Jest to read, I'm going to wrap this episode up. If you liked the show, fine. And if you didn't, you could just keep that crap to yourself because I have enough emails as it is. But don't forget to hit whatever button makes the algorithm happy. Thanks for listening. Whatever.
I hope the Xanax lasted you through all of that nonsense. Since you are still here, it would give my undies a tingle if you drop a 5-star review. Follow Have You Read This podcast on Instagram, or I will beat you to death with my walker. Now get me out of here and get me my back pills.